Hello YouTube, welcome back to Assetto Corsa and to part 2 of the Japanese pack review. Today's review we're going to be looking at the Toyota Supra. It's known as, or at least in American markets and I suppose some European markets, they call it the Mark IV. It's not actually the Mark IV since Toyota don't actually use marks. They use the A codes, or at least in this car they use A codes anyway. So this is the A80 Supra, which is basically the last Supra that they made. Until, of course, the next Supra comes out. I mean, we've all seen the concepts of the Toyota FT1 and all of those, and people think that that's going to be the next Supra, especially when they had this one press conference. Was it last year? They had a press conference, and in that press conference, they were introducing the FT1, and on that, they actually had all the Supras on the presentation first. So the 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, was it the 40? Was it 50, 60, 70, 80? And they had that all there, and then they had the FT1 next to that, which makes people think that, yeah, this is going to be the next Supra, the FT1. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about this particular Supra, which is a Supra that a lot of people see. It's a very popular Supra. It's a very popular engine. But before we go into the engine, let's talk a little bit about the specs, as we always do. 1,510 kilos. It's not a light car. It is not a light car. 276 bhp. That's right, that 276 bhp number is back, at least for Japanese markets, and 458 newton meters of torque at around 4,500 rpm. Top speed is 155 miles an hour, and 0 to 60 is about 4.9 seconds. This car comes with a 6-speed manual gearbox. And the engine, here we go, the engine is a 2.6 litre inline 6 twin turbo Toyota 2JZ engine, or for those of you in America, that's the 2JZ engine. Very interesting engine. It's used a lot in engine swaps into other cars. It's got a lot of, they've had collaborations with many tuning companies and this engine to put it into other cars, and it seems to work. And other Toyotas, of course, they put it into other Toyotas as well. I think some people put this in Hondas and Nissans as well, the 2JZ engine, and it does work. It's a very good engine. The car though is interesting because, well, it's got a 53-47 weight distribution, so it's slightly, ever so slightly front heavy. And of course this is the 276 bhp era of cars, although the American and European markets had that bumped up with different turbochargers, and they had that up to 320 bhp if I remember correctly. Europe was 313 and the United States was 320. Japan was 276. So there you go. And Japan's car was actually also limited to 112 miles an hour, I think, whilst these ones were limited to 155. So it's a bit interesting because Kunos have a 276 version, which clearly looks like it's the Japanese version. It's a proper JDM version, but it's not got that limiter. Kind of glad about that. I wouldn't want to do 112 miles an hour in this car. I want to be able to push this car as far as I can, and it seems that 155, 156 miles an hour is about as far as you can push it. That means that this car was competing against the likes of the RX-7, the NSX, those kind of cars. 276 bhp on both of those cars as well. The thing is about that is that this car is heavier than them. The RX-7, for example, was 1,300 kilos, or maybe thereabouts. I think it was 1,300 kilos, or somewhere around that kind of thing. And the NSX was 1,350 kilos, whilst this car is 1,500 kilos. So it's a good 150 to 200 kilos heavier than its competitors. Of course, I think it was also lighter though than the Mitsubishi 3000 GT. I think that was another 276 bhp car. So it was lighter than that one, but that still makes it quite a heavy car. Anyway, observations about the car. First thing I'm going to note is that the turbo in this car is too loud. In Assetto Corsa, it is too loud. There is no way this car is this loud with the turbo in real life. In fact, I know someone who used to have a Supra, and I've heard his Supra. It wasn't this loud. The turbo was not this loud. It sounds like it's got a lot more pressure than it has, especially at the lower RPMs, because you know, if you're trying to drive this normally, and you'll see at the end of the video where I do just drive it down the back straight, or down the main straight, I'll drive it sort of normally at a lower speed, at lower RPMs, and listen to the turbo, and it's crazily loud. It shouldn't be that loud. The car is not as agile as the RX-7 that I was testing out last week. That was kind of surprising. It's more prone to understeer, I found, and it just felt like there was less overall mechanical grip. It wasn't exactly riveting in the drive. It was a good car, don't get me wrong, it's still a very good car, but it just didn't feel as connected. I didn't feel as connected to the car as a driver as I did in the RX-7. The RX-7 I felt a lot more connected. That being said, the sound is better than the RX-7. It's not as whiny. If I had one complaint about the RX-7 sounds, is although they were accurate, it sounds like there's a bit too much treble in the rotary engine and the exhaust note. Just a bit too much. I know someone again who's driven an RX-7, and they said that it is a bit too whiny for that. So there we go. The first gear is quite short in this car. Very, very easy to spin up the tyres. Get a bit of a clutch kick going. You can really spin up the tyres. Second gear is fine, and onwards it's all fine. Moving on to the model. I'm doing this in a bit of a odd order today. I thought I'd just change it up a bit. Moving on to the model. The model is really well done. It does look extremely, extremely accurate all the way around. I did check it inside and out. Texturing is also really well done. Again, you've got that nice metallic paint. It's got this nice flake look. Very, very nice. I have to admit, it does look very different to any of the cars that we've had so far, so I'm very happy about that. And the detailing is really, really good. I mean, if you look at the steering wheel, you'll see the bump mapping on the steering wheel and on the dashboard as well, and you'll just see around the whole car. It's been very, very nicely made. One bug that I do have to mention with the textures is that if you look at the dials, you've got the full beam lights on. Full beam lights are not supposed to be on this. It's not we haven't got full beam lights on. We've just got standard headlights on, and so that's a bug, and that's kind of annoying me. It bugs me. Bugs me. Force feedback is nice. You can feel the bumps in the road. It is a very, very nice force feedback. I didn't actually have to reduce it too much at all. And the suspension feels really good as well. It's not too stiffly sprung as to throw you off on every curb you hit, but it's not too soft that you bump off every, or you start bouncing off every bump. The car corner's pretty flat, so it's been well made too, and that helps the control of the car. But still, you still have that little bit of understeer. The throttle response is very progressive. There wasn't any discernible lag or delay. That's probably due to how the twin turbos work. The first turbo kicks in at around 1,800 RPM. The second one has a pre-boost at 3,500 and kicks in, I think, around 4,000 RPM. So they do work quite nicely together. Unlike the RX-7, which you have that kick. But I have to admit, I like the kick. The brakes are sharp and feel progressive. And it felt like you really could stop the car, but again, the biggest problem here on this car overall was just that turbo sound. That turbo sound was just too loud as I lose control of the car. And you'll see here that the car still does remain fairly flat, even as I'm spinning out. So it does have that. It's got some good things going for it. Overall, it's a nice car. It's good to drive. It's nothing too overly fancy. But it is a nice car. It sounds fairly good. It's got good sounds, and like I said, the turbo sounds are good, just loud, and they just need to make it quieter. That's all they need to do. And I like this car. I do. I've always liked Supras. I've always liked their engines as well. And now you're gonna hear as we come up to the end. I'm gonna give you my grade anyway. I'm giving it an 8.5 out of 10. If the turbos were quieter, I probably would have given it a 9 out of 10. And it would have been a fairly good car, but here we go. Now I'm going to cross, once I get under the gantry. Right, here we go. Now, just slow the car down, and you will hear, I do like the backfire noises, by the way. There you go. Right, now listen to the turbo. That's too loud. Imagine driving that, if you were driving a real car, like that's just way too loud. So I'm just going to pull in here back into a parking spot, and I'm going to switch over to the time attack version. There is a drift version available. See, that's way too loud. There is a drift version of this car available. I'm not going to be reviewing the drift version as I'm no good at drifting, but there is a drift version available, and it's fairly okay. I mean, I did take it out for a spin. You do start sliding quite a bit, but you do have to throw the car around. But here we go, switching over to the time attack version. First thing you'll see that I'll do is switch the turbo over to 100%. Next thing you're going to notice, that's what I was waiting for. I was wondering why I do that. Next thing you're going to notice is that the engine note immediately sounds like it's not muffled. It doesn't sound like it's muffled anymore. It sounds like they've stripped it out of all the sound insulation materials or something, and the car is just in a very racing stage. And it has a wonderful turbo sound. Specs of this car is lighter than the standard car, but only by 5 kilos, 1,505 kilos, as opposed to 1,510. Power is definitely up though at 690 bhp at 7,000 rpm. Again, it's from the same engine, that 2JZ engine. There's a lot you can do with that engine. A lot of people tune this engine to, some crazy numbers, and this is obviously one of them. This is a time attack version, so it's got to be a race version, and it does have 756 newton meters of torque at 5,000 rpm. So a lot of power, a lot of torque. Unfortunately, there aren't any other figures because this is, in essence, a fictional car. There are real versions of this car that do exist, and I'm wondering why Assetto Corsa didn't actually, make it a completely real version. I guess licensing is probably where it was lacking. Because if you do look at the livery, and that's something that I'm going to point out straight away, if you look in the replay box at the livery, you will see that it's got this green and red colors, and anyone who's watched racing, anyone who knows about Supras, will know that those are the colors of Castrol and Tom's Racing, Tom's Castrol. And that was a very famous Supra that used to race around, and it looked a lot like that. I mean, the kit, the body kit on it does look like it's taken from that. The color design looks like it's taken from that. So there is that. I know someone's gonna make one of the Tom's liveries straight out and put it on this car. In fact, it's probably already out at the time of this review. I haven't checked it, but naturally I've got to do this without the extra mods because I'm reviewing it as it is in Kunos. Observations about the car. First things first, turbo lag. Be aware of the turbo lag. The turbo kicks in at around 5,000 RPM. That's where the turbo kicks in mainly. So you do want to be aware because you feel a lot more power as it comes through that, and you will get thrown out in first and second gear. You have to have a very steady left foot to avoid getting caught out by that turbo lag. Third to sixth gear is fairly okay. It's just first and second. Second is something that you're definitely going to be using as well, so you do need to be aware. Try and keep it in the higher rev range if you're using second. And if not, well, just be very careful. As you can see, I'm putting it's the force feedback level. I've put it down to 89%. This car felt heavier on the force feedback. It was really strong, so I needed to bring it down 10% or 11% by mistake, but I meant to bring it down 10%. It was definitely very strong, a lot stronger than the normal Supra, and it didn't feel too right, so I had to bring it down. And it's still stronger than the Supra here, but at least it's manageable, and I'm not clipping too much. As you probably saw, if you're looking at the pedal box, you can see that the final grey bar was going red a lot before I put it down. The suspension in this car feels a lot stiffer. Riding the curbs no longer a good idea because of the stiffer suspension, and it definitely has a lower ride height. So you are more prone to oversteering now. The understeer seems pretty much dialed out, but you might see it here that I stopped. No, I managed to control that one fairly well. But there's definitely an amount of oversteer that you're getting on this, especially with the extra power coming out of the corners. You've got 690 brake horsepower now. It's going to want to kick out just a bit more. But that understeer does seem dialed out for the majority of it, and it feels really nice. I have to admit, I didn't think that this car would be easy to drive. It's not the easiest car to drive, but it's still fairly easy to drive. The modelling looks great. There's a few changes to the normal car. You'll see there's a front splitter, there's a new rear wing, there's some side skirts. You know, there's those kind of things. The interior, disappointingly, looks the same. Apart from the steering wheel, actually. There is a new steering wheel. I'll just point that one out. There's definitely a new steering wheel, but it just looks the same inside. It doesn't look like a race car in any which way. It just looks like the standard Toyota, and that someone's just gone and kitted it up and not bothered, you know, changing the dials, which is something you would do. There you go. You can see I hit the curb there. And unlike the other Supra, where I probably would have been able to avoid going on the grass on the opposite side, this one did throw you out a bit because of that stiffer suspension. It just did not like it. Which is understandable given, there you go again, which is understandable given the race nature of this car. But again, coming back to the interior, it was sad that the interior wasn't right. I wanted to see more of a fanciful interior, even just change up the dials a bit, make them look like a race car, add a boost gauge or something. I know it's got a boost gauge built in, but you know, add a separate boost gauge. You know, have some artistic freedom, have some fancy on this car. Don't make it look just like a normal car. Textures, good as the other car though. People, you know, like I said, people may recognize the colours as being Tom's Castro colours, so they are just as good as the other car. Everything looks nice, everything looks like it's well done. Again, it's got the full beam lights as opposed to headlights. It's annoying. It should have the green headlight sign, not the blue full beam sign. But I'm going to ignore that since I mentioned in the last one, so no point going how much it bugs me in this one. Sounds in this car are really, really good. The turbo seems to match the way the car should sound. It's loud. It's just as loud as the other one. But it matches this car because this car has a bigger turbo. This car has more power. And this car definitely is a race car, so it shouldn't sound like a road car. It sounds aggressive. This car sounds more aggressive. It sounds more dangerous, and it definitely sounds faster. The exhaust sounds definitely have more roar to it, and the engine tickover, like I said, sounds like it's unmuffled. The sound is more crisp, sharper, and it brings you a bit more edge on, towards the edge of the seat. The brakes, similarly, they feel sharper as well, but you do have to naturally get into them more, and that's normal because you're going faster. You're going to press the brakes a bit harder. So overall, this car's I think fairly good. I prefer this car in terms of how it's been made to the standard version of the car. Not to say the standard version is bad, but I think the standard version, it's that turbo whine that really annoys you in the standard version. But everything else about the standard version is fairly good, and this version just feels like it's a racier version. It's more fun. I mean, the standard version, you race it against the NSX, you race it against the RX-7. I think they'd both honestly beat it though, given their design. And they were trying to head into supercar territory back then, or at least as close to supercar territory as you could get. This car though was just heading for speed, fast race car, designed pure out and out for racing, which is why that interior disappoints me. Nevertheless, the rest of the car really impresses me a lot. It was great fun to drive, so I'm going to give this car a 9 out of 10, so 0.5 more. And plus I like the backfiring and the turbo noises. The car just felt right. It just felt really, really right to drive. And I think it was a really good drive. After the video, after I recorded it, I did take this car out for another couple more laps, so that kind of shows that it was pretty good. But then I went back to the RX-7 because so far I like the RX-7 the most. But that's going to bring us to the end of this video, so thank you very much for watching. Please remember to hit the like button if you like this video. Subscribe to our channel for more videos on Assetto Corsa. Next week, probably looking at the Mazda MX-5. And if not the Mazda MX-5s, we're probably going to be looking at the Nissan 350Z and then the Toyota AE86. So make sure you guys tune in for that. And leave a comment in the comments box below letting me know what you think of this car. Until then, I think I'll go enjoy this car more.